Come to the place of Halloween, come one, come all, bring self and scream. To Pumpkin Patch and Witch's Glen, Graveyard Asylum and Spider's Den. So come along and mind the ghost. It's Bibbles playing Planet Coaster.
Hello, I'm Mr. Pibbles, and welcome to this brand new mini-series here in Planet Coaster 2. Now, we are putting the challenge park on pause for a moment while we are looking at this. Something slightly new for the month of October, something slightly spooky. But before we get into it, let me just turn on the lights quickly. There we go, the lights are on, and, yes, welcome to this brand new park. This is the Spookton Scream Park. And what we are doing in this episode is we are making a start. You'll see I've already got a little bit in here and there of the start of infrastructure, and we have a park entrance which looks rather creepy from down here. But before we kind of get into this, let me just kind of give you an overview. So, for the latter bit of the month of October here on the countdown to the 31st, we are going to be creating a park here with a couple of different lands, 4 different lands and a central hub, all themed around this sort of slightly spooky park here in Planet Coaster 2. So without further ado, let's get on with some time-lapse. Yes, hello, and welcome to this very spooky time-lapse. I don't know what it makes it a spooky time-lapse over, a regular time-lapse, but we'll call it a spooky time-lapse. Hello, and welcome to this very new series. It's always exciting when we start something new in Planet Coaster 2, and we haven't really done that for a while since we started the Challenge Park, and this is the first real thing we're doing that's sort of branching out from that point. So if you are here, welcome along. And if this is the first you're seeing of me, welcome in. So, I should probably mention what we are starting off with here is our basically opening section to the park. Now, Disneyland has Main Street USA, Alton Towers has Towers Street, and we have our own little street at the front of the park. This is called Creep Street, and it's sort of here to just build atmosphere as you enter the park. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, we have a number of episodes here with a number of different areas of the park. We're going to have 4 main areas and this central hub, which will be quite interesting, and it's not going to be a massive series. It's only going to be a handful of episodes. And so it's only going to be a small park, but I wanted really to kind of branch out and try something new. Because obviously we've done bits and pieces of the Challenge Park. And the Challenge Park, as good as it is, it doesn't really provide much in the way of, being able to branch out and try something because I've got my established style. So instead here we are I've given myself a little bit more budget to play around with, and that is kind of what we're here to do. We're here to use some budget to make something slightly spooky, which is quite fun. Now, a lot of my influences for this park, obviously instead of, the Challenge Park, which is themed around such joys as Blackpool Pleasure Beach and slightly smaller family parks around the UK. This is more big budget, shall we say. So it's not quite Disneyland level, I wouldn't say, but this is closer to something like we'll say Thorpe Park or Alton Towers here in the UK. It's slightly more themed than our smaller parks, but it still has that sort of slightly unique British charm to it, which is what I'm trying to kind of encapsulate in this, with a lot of, this townhouse architecture that came in the sorcery pack, which I know is very much meant to feel very Harry Potter, which is perfect for what we're trying to do here. Now, I probably should explain what I'm doing at the moment. I wanted to have sort of a main ride as you come in. So I wanted it to be like, you come into this park, there's stuff like services and stuff, but right ahead of you there's this ride, and I will say that I have properly planned out this park. I know I didn't really plan out anything to do with the challenge park, and we're taking that as it comes episode by episode and seeing how it goes. But for this, I wanted to branch out a little bit and actually have a go at trying to plan a park, and this is ultimately what I started out with, in that I wanted this Creep Street to sort of have the shape that it's got, and alongside that it would have a couple of different small bits in there, like you'd have a souvenir shop, some food, guest services, all of that, and it would have this, which I knew I wanted to be a chair swing, but I didn't quite know what I wanted to do with it. But as you will see when I get to theming it, I have some really fun ideas, and it turns out really interesting. I just love it to pieces. And in terms of what we're doing with the rest of this park, if you saw the intro, I don't know why you wouldn't have seen the intro to this video, because it was right there, and you couldn't have made it this far without seeing it. But the whole idea is that we'll have these different lands, and they're all kind of expressed in the intro. So we've got different things. I'm not going to spoil it much, because you will see it obviously in the introduction to this video, so that's going to be mostly a surprise for when we do get there. And another thing I should say with this series is it's going to involve a lot more cuts than I do in my Challenge Park series. In my Challenge Park, I literally just click record, and then I record for an hour, time-lapse the footage, hey presto, an episode. But here I actually went, okay, I'm not able to do everything I want to do in an episode in an hour, so let's cut the footage and let's kind of cut it down. So I'm doing a lot more work in terms of how much I'm actually doing, but ultimately I think it looks a lot better for what it is. And now we're coming in and we're doing arguably one of my favourite parts of this episode, is theming up this chairplane, which I will tell you now we do rename, and it becomes the Scaroplane, which is incredibly cheesy, I know, but I really liked it. And obviously we are here putting in some spider's webs over the top, because I just thought it looked slightly spooky, sinking them in and looking at it from a distance. It sort of has that charm to it. And the biggest thing I wanted to do with this was to make it tie into most of the lands we've got here in the park. And I did toy with having these giant spider strands be the cables, but that just seemed like it would take too much effort. So instead, we're theming up the back of the seats. So we've got these little spider statues hanging off the back of some of the seats. And then on the back of other seats, we end up with these, which are sort of meant to be tombstones, which looks quite nice. I mean, I usually wouldn't say that about tombstones, but... And then on the inside, we've got these gargoyles, which looks quite nice, which I like. And then, this was my favourite. This is my favourite thing about this ride, and it's my favourite thing that I had an idea for, is that there's these falcon pieces that come from the Falcon roller coaster, and what I was going to do is just sink some of these into the chains that are kind of, holding the seats up, and copying them across to all of the seats, and then taking a step back, it looks like a flock of birds. And you will see it in a moment when we get in and actually watch it going around. It really looks quite good. And I myself am surprised about that. And I toy around with a couple other things, and I end up with these gargoyles up the top. And I think it looks really cool, because it has that sort of gothic style that I was wanting to go for. And ultimately, it just looks really nice. And so getting these drats in for the other set, it looks a little bit of a mess, but I promise you it looks really cool. Now, I don't know what it was with putting the ride in there. It got rid of this one piece of path here, so we come back in and we add it back in there. And I'm not going to tell you what that is quite yet. That is the job for the next episode. And now we get into the infrastructure of Creep Street itself with this. Obviously, we are starting here by placing these bits down and creating this little alcove right near the entrance. This is our guest services building. So it's got some toilets and guest services. And you'll see me now coming back to the townhouse stuff to kind of make it look good. There's me just marvelling over my my ravens that are flying around. I've called them crows, I've called them ravens, I've called them everything under the sun. Oh well. And just sinking that in there like that does look quite nice. But ultimately we change it. Again, you can see me there. I love those crows. The crows are such an amazing idea on my part. And again, I don't want to say that I've peaked too early in this park, but I genuinely may have peaked too early with my ravens. I call them ravens, I call them crows. They're all corvids, so don't come at me. And just adding in these wooden beams here, just along there, same along there. It looks quite nice. Now, getting in some facades. I opted for these fairy tale facades because I thought they'd go really nicely with the townhouse set, which they do. And just sinking them in there, it does look slightly spooky, and I like it. And ultimately, it is just a game of getting the trim in and making sure that it looks alright throughout this whole bit. But yes, as I say, that is a lot of the episode moving forward. It is placing buildings and trying to get something that looks nice, which is why, which is why I decided to cut the middle portion out. Because if I hadn't, it would have basically, the middle of the episode would have been half an hour of me struggling to try and place building pieces and try to make it look good. But we are finally toying with another feature that came with one of the most recent updates, and that is the ability to kind of angle full blueprint builds and scenery. I can't remember the word, but there we go. There is our cut, and we will look back at what we've done later. But I should probably tell you what we've done. All we've done is we've placed buildings around the edge of Creep Street and around the edge of the the scarer plane in the middle. And this is one of the things that we are working on kind of around this, is these archways that will go around the park, and kind of these will be almost our equivalent of the portals at Epic Universe that lead to the different places. You know, they'll be slightly themed up to wherever they're going, but they will all look slightly different, and it just means that there is something there that you can walk through and you're like, okay, I know where I'm going. Now, I don't know if each of the lands is going to be able to connect to each other quite yet in terms of walkability, but that is something I can figure out. And getting in just a little bit of roof on there, Ultimately, I usually use a different trim if I noticed that I was using, a 2 meter for a 4 meter roof, but the 2 meter slope on that, I quite like it. Makes it look a little bit different and a little bit spooky, so I like it. And this is another thing that was included in the townhouse set that I really like, is these facades and the timbering, and it just fits in really nicely. And you can do so much with it. And yeah, ultimately, I think it looks nice. And getting in some trim, I've used this trim all around this area. And it's the same here, where we come in and we add more. And we're using more of this kind of angular building. Now, ultimately, I can't quite tell you kind of what we've done previously, because I haven't shown you it, but this is probably the best equivalent that I've got, because it is just what it looks like. And getting in some more of these townhouse pieces, just to bridge those gaps. And put in these brick walls there, just to make it look like a complete building instead of two, technically 3 buildings, all at different angles. And there in the background you can see my favourite build of this land, which is, I say this land, of this episode, which is the bit that's just outside the queue line for the Scarab, which I used a 4 meter high slope, and then I sort of took that and put it at a 45-degree angle, and by putting it at a 45-degree angle, that roof then becomes flat and straight, and it just goes high up, which looks quite interesting along the skyline, because you've got all these roofs, and then you've got this roof which acts basically like a flat wall, which I really like. And you can see me here just doing some intricate theming around these buildings, which is quite nice. And yeah, putting these little bits on, and all of the townhouse pillars, they're really lovely pieces, and I'm so glad I finally really properly get a chance to dig in and use them all. And I could go and use these pieces elsewhere, if I was building sort of for want of better phrasing, British suburbia, with kind of our classic detached housing. I'd use these townhouse bits because they do look really nice for what they are. And there we go. That is that. It's so interesting how just putting a little bit of the building at a bit of an angle just works so well for what it is. And coming in here, just adding these townhouse bits, we are making another arch off to a different land. But what is this land? You'll never know. I know, but then I'm the one who needs to know, because, at some point we'll actually be coming through and adding this. And this, for me, is one of the most interesting out of the arches, because I decided to go for something completely different for this, and that is this little bridge that now exists between the two buildings on either side. And while we haven't got into the building on the other side, it just looks rather interesting in the way that it's sort of positioned there within the wall. And it did take a little bit of manoeuvring these pieces around just to get it to properly sit right, but once we get it in, it's in, which is brilliant. And then we come over and we use our first bits that aren't really from the townhouse set, that being the aquatic corrugated roof, and we scrap them because, it doesn't look great. And instead we go for our lovely townhouse roof. A bit of a bait and switch there. I go, ooh, are we using something different? No, it's townhouse. But there we go. Just sinking these bits in here and getting our sorcery theme back. I try a few bits and pieces. And we do ultimately put a couple of freezes in here, like this massive spider. But the biggest thing that I like about, this building is what we're about to do, which is to put some bits and pieces in that just feel almost like a spider web. Spindles, I believe is the word. We create some spindles using this townhouse beam, and again, I just think it looks quite nice for what it is. But yes, so I should probably tell you a little bit about, the schedule and stuff for this series. There will be an episode coming out every day until the 31st, when, the final episode will air. So the big plan for this series is that we will have an entire park by the 31st. And of course, I'm recording all of these ahead of time. But, who wouldn't? But you can see these spindles going in here, and it leaves a rather low roof, if you will. But, that doesn't necessarily matter, because guests can still get under it. I have checked. But yes, you can see that all there, and we now just add a couple of picnic benches in to kind of add, a little bit of just something to this area to make it feel slightly different. And the biggest thing that I do off camera between episodes is sort out some lighting, because ultimately I don't necessarily want to completely show this park at night until, we're much later on, which, is that a good idea? Who knows? But ultimately, what I want to do is kind of build up this park and then leave the majority of kind of the surprises till the last episode, which would be quite cool. So things like dark rides and coasters and stuff, we're all going to POV them at the end of the series. But I just thought this is a nice little way to come in, flex my creative skills. Now, I believe we are coming towards the end of the time lapse, so I will see you in a moment in real time, just after we put some bins in. That, of course, is to the best of my memory. My memory hasn't served me well. Oh, no, we're not finishing off here. We still got a little bit to go. Silly me. I apologise. Yes, that is the joy of going, okay, I know what I've done, but do I know what I've done? But yes, you can see me here just getting in some benches, some bins, and now we just get a little bit of greenery just around the outside of the Scaraplane, which is quite nice. And the last thing we're going to do in this episode is build a little fountain. If you've seen any of my videos, you'll know that I like a good fountain. I've built no less than 2, technically 3, but I got rid of the third one in my challenge park. But I just think they're a nice way to kind of add subtle theming to areas and just add something to break up a regular path. So what we're doing here is we're adding in, these water spouts. It's a very simple kind of fountain, but we add in these water spouts, and then we add in some sorcery theme bits and pieces. I check bits here and there, and ultimately I go for some of these cats and some of the griffins, which look quite nice around and about. And now we're coming up to the end of the time lapse, so I will see you in a couple of moments in real time. I hope you've enjoyed. Okay, welcome to real time as we look at everything we've done today. Now we've made a start here on our lovely main part of this, that being Creep Street. And obviously the bits that we saw were this little bit along here, along with that little bit there, and our nice little scare plane in the middle, with all of the additions. And I was looking at it a little bit ago, and honestly, these crows are my favourite bit on here because they just look so good. You look at it and you just see the crows flying around. That's really cool. So what we did away from the camera are these bits here. So that being this first little portal and this massive building along here, and then we picked back up over here with these two portals and this little food place and this thing that now exists. So I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of this new series here in Planet Coaster 2. I've been Mr. Pibbles, and I will see you in the next episode. Roll that outro!